And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll. I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of new stories this week on several different topics. We, as usual, have a couple new e-bikes that have been launched, but we've got some other interesting things. We're going to talk about whether or not electric bike companies give us honest range ratings. We're going to talk about the advantages of riding an e-bike without the e part. There are a few new launches from non-e-bike companies. We've got an electric motorcycle that just started delivering. We've got Polaris delivering their new electric UTV. We've got another couple interesting stories, an electric kayak conversion. So stick around throughout the whole show because we've got a lot coming. But where are we going to start off with this week, Seth?
All right. More than just scooters, Razor launches electric moped style e-bike for adults.
Yeah, so this one, I mean, I hate calling everything a Super 73 clone, but it's hard to look at Razor's new e-bike and not say, wow, that looks like a Super 73. I mean, it basically looks like the Z1 style e-bike that they've been running for a few years now. Razor, of course, is the company that started with electric scooters, or in fact, just kick scooters back in like the early 2000s. But now we mostly know them for their electric scooters. But they've really expanded their adult lineup. And this new Razor Rambler 20 is an adult-sized electric bike. It looks like a Super 73, but it's got a few interesting things to it. First of all, it's pretty affordably priced at just $1,000, so you're never going to find a Super 73 for that. It's not incredibly high power. It runs on a 36-volt system, I believe, but it is a nice addition here because it sort of expands their child's e-bike lineup because they already had the Razor Rambler 12 and 16, which were sort of like for kids and teenagers. And now they've come out with the 20, which looks very similar, but it adds pedals and it makes it into an actual electric bike for adults. It'll get up to 20 miles an hour. I believe it does have a throttle, so we're looking at a Class 2 e-bike here. But other than that, it's fairly bare bones. The one thing that I really like about it is that the headlight and tail light are fairly unique. We rarely see unique parts there because most companies just pull those out of a catalog and throw them on their e-bikes. But it's got this sort of like chromed out bullet style headlight and a circular tail light that looks kind of motorcycle-y, which makes sense because they've gone with this sort of like cafe racer style e-bike here. But all in all, you know, we've got a fairly decent looking $1,000 Super 73 clone. Nothing terribly special, but then again, for Razor to enter this new category, I'd say it's a pretty good first shot at a full-size e-bike here. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, looks like a fun e-bike. It obviously doesn't have suspension. It looks like those are just kind of pseudo front fork suspension
Yeah.
thingies. But does it have a gears or is it just a one speed?
It's a good question. I don't think it has a shifter on there. I don't see one from the pictures.
Yeah.
I think it's funny, all the pictures are from the left side of the bike, so it's hard to see, but it looks like a single speed to me.
Yeah. That's fine. I think, for 20 miles per hour, Brad does it. I think it's pretty normal. I do like the tires. Kind of remind me of the tires on the Luna Eclipse a little bit.
Oh yeah.
What's great about Razor is their reach. They're going to be in Targets and probably Walmarts, and a lot of other people are going to see them all over the place. There actually isn't that many retail establishments anymore. I guess it's just Target and Walmart's everywhere. But
Well, they're in Best Buy too, so I think you'll be able to get it in Best Buy.
Best Buy, okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, it's always good to see e-bikes in more places. I don't know if that you're going to be able to test ride down the aisles of a Best Buy. I don't know if they'll let you take it out, but it'll be more in front of more people. Maybe somebody just returned a $200 item at Best Buy. And they're like, oh, I'll just throw this at a e-bike or something. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't buy this. I'd probably buy from a drop ship company, but I think a lot of people this would make some sense for. And also I do like their lineup, the little guy bikes and getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's cool because we rarely ever see that sort of progression. Normally companies just have either adult stuff or children's rides. And so for Razor to cover like the entire age group is fairly novel in this industry.
Yeah. And I actually kind of like the smaller ones, and I've seen these online as well, because they have the battery low, so they keep the weight low. Whereas this thing, I think those probably are lead acid batteries or AGM batteries, but the bigger battery, I'm sure it's lithium under the seat.
And you got room there for like your lunchbox and stuff too.
Right, right. Yeah, it's cool. Glad to see it, and I'm sure Best Buy will have sales and everything else. All right, moving forward. Heybike unveils new folding fat tire electric bike that targets bang for your buck.
This is the Heybike Ranger S. So Heybike has really been expanding their lineup, and the Ranger S here, it's one of the first bikes they've produced that looks like a bit of a higher class bike. A lot of their initial stuff looked more like a kind of Electrek XP or that level where, it's a fine bike, but it doesn't look that nicely designed. Now they're going with like what appears to be hydroformed aluminum tubes, and this bike just certainly looks like a next step up for the company. So it's cool to see them expanding and improving their lineup this way. So the Ranger S is a Class 2 e-bike. So it comes out of the box 20-mile-an-hour throttle. It is unlockable though, so you can get up to 28 miles per hour on pedal assist, which will turn it into a Class 3. It's also got some nicer parts. So got, of course, a 750-watt rear hub, but there's hydraulic disc brakes, which is very nice. We've got those cast wheels, so you don't have spokes that you're going to worry about maintenance issues, that sort of thing. It's got a decently large battery, 48 volt, 14 and a half amp hour. It's not terribly big. I'd say it's probably average these days. And we're seeing a lot of companies start coming out with bigger batteries than that. But Heybike has always been sort of a budget-minded brand. They're not one of these companies that comes out with the nicest stuff. They're not companies that come out with the newest stuff. So for them to have a pretty slick-looking bike here, even if it's not the fanciest one out there or the nicest bike out there, I'd still say it's pretty good. And because they're a budget category bike, they've always tried to keep those prices down. Here we're looking at a $14.99 price tag, which for this bike feels more than fair. They pack a lot in here. It's a bike that can get up to Class 3 speeds. It's got auto sensing headlight and tail lights that will turn on automatically at night. Powerful hydraulic brakes, basically the works. It's a folding bike as well. A lot of people don't really fold these heavy fat tire e-bikes, but if you needed to fit it into the trunk of a car or something, you probably could. And so at $1,500, I'm fairly impressed here with what they've been able to put together. Heybike doesn't have the same legacy of support that some of these larger brands have, like Rad Power bikes, like Aventon or Electrek e-bikes. So you're going in perhaps with a little bit more of a risk up front, but the company's been around for maybe a year and a half now or so, and so far I've heard lots of good things about them. People are pretty happy. So I would say that, despite it being a little more risky from that front, this isn't like a brand new Asian e-bike company. They've at least been delivering for a while, and we've seen some, the beginning of them building a reputation here, which I always like to see. What do you think of this setup, Seth?
It looks nice. I think we saw like the beginnings of this, or maybe some prototypes of this at I want to say CES. Didn't Heybike have like a big display there? Maybe not this particular bike, but or maybe they were alluding to this bike. Like you said, I think this is a really nice project from them. The fact that the battery's in the tube kind of differentiates it from a lot of the other stuff we've seen out there. Um, this the mag wheels remind me of the Himaways a little bit, and it's a 750 Bafang, right?
Yes.
So it might be that same bike or sorry, same motor and controller, which I think we were kind of not super impressed with the the cadence sensor and the it took a little bit of time before the power kicked in, and it took a little bit of time before it kicked off in that Himaway bike. So I wonder if this one has the same uh, thing. I do like that it's also got a 4 amp charger. A lot of these bikes come with like a 2 amp, so that's a plus.
Yeah, it's a good point because those 2 amp chargers can take a while to recharge when you're, almost out. So to get, basically half the charging time is a pretty nice benefit. And it's so easy for companies to do. Like just spend $3 more and give us a 4 amp charger.
Right. Yeah, it's like not don't cut there. Like there's things to cut, but like don't put suspension on the front. Yeah, and this one also has suspension. Probably not the super high end, but something that'll soften the road a little bit. And obviously the big tires will do the same. It's a great package. I think we've got a pretty good relationship with Heybike. I think we'll probably be reviewing this at some point.
Yeah, we haven't heard about any review units yet, but hopefully we'll be able to get on one of these because it does look pretty slick, and it seems to me like a step up in Haybike's design compared to the last few Haybikes we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Moving on. Here, this is a good one because we get this a lot. Here's why you can't trust electric bike companies when it comes to battery range.
Yeah, so this, like, I don't want to make this out like an attack on electric bike companies, but anyone who has ridden e-bikes before, especially if you've bought one yourself, you'll know that you almost never get the stated range that companies say. And it's not like, with a car where they might say, you get like, an EPA 32 mile per gallon or an NEDC 250 miles of range, and you get like pretty close to it, but you never quite get there. With e-bikes, sometimes you'll get half of the range that it says on the marketing literature on the website. And so we sort of broke this down and covered a few reasons why this is the case. The first main thing is that there's no standard for range testing on electric bikes. It's not like an EPA rated range or something like that. And what that means is that e-bike companies are thus free to just say whatever range they want and determine it however they want. In the best case, they've actually gone out and done real world range testing. And some companies actually do this and they share that data with us. So Aventon was one of the first companies that would put on the sales page the exact range that they got from tests at every pedal assist level and on throttle. But what a lot of companies do is that they unfortunately just do either a single test with like a super lightweight rider in the lowest power mode and they say that's our range, or they might not even do tests and they just sort of estimate what they think the range will be. And that's where you see a lot of these, 60, 70, 90-mile ranges on like small battery fat tire bikes where you can already start to guess that that's not going to be a super accurate range for bikes like this. So without any standard for range testing, it sort of leaves it up to the companies. The next thing though is that even if companies do this like, really nice each level range testing and give us the data, even with that data, it doesn't mean you're going to get the same range because there are so many factors that affect an e-bike's range. Small things like, how pumped up your tires are versus big things like are you riding uphill or downhill or into a tailwind. All these things can make a huge difference. Rider weight, position in riding, if you're wearing a backpack, if you're in a high or low gear, if you're on, like gravel versus tarmac, everything can make a big difference. And if you add all of those up, the same bike could get 15 miles or 50 miles of range. So for, one company to give one range is nearly impossible to begin with. And that means that they're usually going to give you a idealized in the perfect world, tires at 100 psi on super smooth asphalt. This is the range. But there is a way to sort of estimate range if you're looking at different e-bikes and you want to know if it's realistic what the companies are telling us. And it does require a little bit of math, but the summary here is that you can basically take the capacity of the battery and divide it by a constant efficiency that's pretty accurate for most e-bikes. And just to go over the numbers kind of at a high level here and not get too lost in the weeds. Basically, you're looking at about 25 watt hours per mile on a throttle bike and about 15 watt hours per mile on a pedal assist bike. So for example, if you just take like a rad power battery at about 624 watt hours, you divide that by 25, you're looking at about 25 miles of range on throttle, or divided by 15, you're looking at closer to about 40 miles on pedal assist. And that actually aligns pretty well with Rad's figures. So, we got to give Rad kind of a pat on the back for giving us fairly honest range ratings there. But in terms of, comparing from one bike to another, that's really the best way to do it is to look at the battery capacity and not necessarily the actual stated range by the company. and then just sort of in the back of your mind consider some of those other factors, like, are they fat tires, are you off-road, are you going uphill, are you a heavier or a lighter rider, that sort of thing. And that way you're going to sort of ballpark in on the right range based on your specific ride, and not just these super idealized numbers that e-bike companies give. And Seth, I mean, you've ridden a ton of e-bikes, you're in a very hilly area as well. I'm sure you've had the dismay of not achieving the kind of range that e-bikes publish before they come to you.
Yeah. I have my own, like, in my brain, I think uh, somebody says 50 miles. In my brain, I think, that's like 25, 30 miles. We have huge hills here. I'm a bigger guy. So I just kind of do that stuff in my head. It's unfortunate that there's not some sort of like EPA range for bikes where they have a standardized test. I know the watt hours mathematics works out, but that doesn't give any benefit to like the companies that do work on efficiency and the seat height and all the other stuff that can help out. And then there's things that probably make zero difference, like regeneration. That's more for saving your brakes, but like if it's just standardized on battery size, it doesn't really kind of motivate bike makers to kind of push the numbers down a little bit or figure out ways to make things more efficient. So I kind of wish there was like an EPA, and as e-bikes get more popular, maybe something like that'll pop up. Maybe the EPA will actually do it and just say, look, we have a track in wherever, and we'll just put on the throttle. I mean, I guess with pedal assist, that's a whole nother variable, but throttle alone would be an easy way to kind of throttle alone on a flat track would be an easy way to, at 20 miles per hour, for instance,
Yeah.
with like, a certain person, like you could be like, I'm the standard person, and, driving around, I guess the different days, hot and cold, windy, those will all be variables. I guess it's not perfect.
It's like
So
whatever agency is in charge of the SI units, and they have like that kilogram somewhere in a
exactly.
vault. It's
Yeah.
like the one e-bike rider they keep in a vault is the standard.
Right. And then, you go to a big birthday party and you're a bigger guy and you change the weight of the standard person. Yeah, I guess it's a tough problem, but we're getting better at kind of figuring these things out. And you're right, like if you can get a rough estimate of how far you're going to go on the battery size and taking into account wheel size and treads and all the other stuff.
Yeah, like you said, maybe once e-bikes continue to become even more popular, someone will step up, EPA, somebody, and create a standard.
Yep. All right. Yes, I ride my electric bike with the power off. Here's why.
Yeah, this story kind of blew up, and I was surprised. I had just come back from a ride where I had been riding without the e-bike turned on, and I thought that, like I do this a lot, maybe I should share it. And it was sort of like a, off the cuff moment, but like people were really interested in why. And so here's the reason. Just a little bit of backstory first. So I first got into e-bikes with like really high power e-bikes. Here's a picture of my first e-bike. It was a 2000-watt beast of an e-bike, and that's how I got into this whole industry. I was never a cyclist. I never considered myself someone who like rode bikes for fun. For me, it was a powerful bike to get around a city because I didn't have a car. And my first few years of e-biking, like I didn't turn the pedals at all. Like my chain would rust off before I'd move a pedal. But over time, as the e-bike started to get nicer, and occasionally I would spin the pedals and I'd be like, oh, that was kind of nice. And then I'd start using pedal assist, and I realized it kind of adds something to the ride. Instead of sitting on it like a motorcycle, you become a little more connected with the machine and you become part of the process. And the more I started using pedal assist, especially on rides that weren't as important that I get somewhere on time, the more I sort of learned to appreciate the slower pace of recreational e-bike riding. And over time, I got better at it. And, I probably got a little more fit because I was never really a strong cyclist. And I started using lower and lower pedal assist levels with less and less power. So one day it was just like, well, I'm on like a nice, flat, relaxing path. I don't really need the electric right now. And I turned it off and I had like a really pleasant ride. And afterwards, I had this really nice feeling that like I did that all by myself. It was like taking the electric training wheels off. And for someone who had never like considered himself a cyclist, it was like a light bulb moment for me. And as I started doing more rides like that, I just started appreciating how much fun it was to actually be the reason that the bike is moving and for it to be like all of my effort. Now, I don't do this for most of my rides when I'm getting somewhere where I need to go, I'm going to buy groceries, that sort of thing. Usually I'm keeping in pedal assist and occasionally I just ignore the pedals altogether and throttle around when I'm, on the clock kind of thing. But I still often, like for this ride that I mentioned here, I was going out on like a Friday morning to a wine store to get some wine when my wife and I were going to go out to a friend's place that night. And so it was not a big, shopping trip. I wasn't on a time crunch. I knew I was about to get overcharged for something I didn't understand. So why rush, right? Like, why not just take a nice leisurely Friday morning ride, which by the way, in Tel Aviv, Friday's the weekend. So it wasn't even a weekday and enjoy, a slow pace through the city on my own power. And as I do this more and more, it just creates such a nice, relaxing way to get around. Now it's slower, it's a little more effort, and it's the fact that I live in a flat city probably makes it less painful than maybe pedaling around your hills, Seth. But for someone who never came from pedaling to slowly realize how much fun riding a bike is, I think is one of a big advantage of electric bikes, and that they bring people in and they show people that you can actually get around with your own two legs, even if you didn't think that was something you would ever do. That's what it did for me.
It's kind of hilarious to me because I came from pedaling, and e-bikes get me over the hill easier. Um, but then I became kind of addicted to e-bikes because hey, I'd like to go 25 miles per hour instead of 15 miles per hour, and I stay in traffic better. And I honestly like I have a gravel bike that I still take every once in a while, but just like thinking about like going up the hill with that thing is like it's hard for me to like go. So it's just funny to me to see you're having like the opposite experience. Like you've come from you started on electric bikes and you've come from electric bikes. Um, so like bigger picture, this makes me think like what like some electric bikes, if you turn the power off, it's really hard. Like it's like I would even say some Bosch bikes, it kind of feels like you're in the mud when you turn the power off. Um, but there are some good bikes that are really great to ride without the electric on. One I have actually two that I really like. I have an old um, Rally Redux IE from 2017. That's kind of my daily driver. It's only a pedal assist bike, but it just sometimes like I'm not going too far. I'm not going up a huge hill, and I'll just not turn I'm going to my neighbor's house. I just won't. You're too lazy to turn the power on, and you're right. It takes you longer. You don't go as fast, but you get there, and it's whatever.
Like an
Um,
easy pace of life kind of ride.
yeah, and it's like I don't know. It's like it is nice to have that. I'm supplying all the power there. The other bike I have that I ride without power is the Luna X2, which I got to get around to getting a review out for that. But it's a fantastic mountain bike. It's made carbon fiber, so it's super light. And they've done a lot of things like instead of putting a big Bafang motor on there, they have the BB8 HD or whatever. So it's a very light mountain electric bike. But every once in a while, I'll go biking with my buddies, and they don't have electric bikes, and I have a really powerful, crazy electric bike. So it's just not the same. Like I would just fly off. So I'll just turn it off, or sometimes I'll cheat and put it in a very low mode. But oftentimes I can keep up with them with the power off. and it's a better experience when you're, with your acoustic bike buddies to just be not electric for a little while. Are you familiar with the Bosch muddy if you turn it off feeling?
I don't ride Bosch bikes too often, but I mean, there certainly is that extra weight feeling, that extra resistance.
Yeah.
Not so much in the motor, but I mean, the whole bike, especially. And Bosch is now making some fairly powerful motors, so you're often finding those on even bigger bikes than you used to, which might
Yeah.
be part of it.
Yeah, the weight's certainly something, but I think the gearing or something isn't great uh for riding without power. And of course, like every e-bike, the thing that you think about is like, okay, if I run out of power, can I get anywhere? And with the Super 73 bikes or like a juiced Scorpion, for instance, you can pedal those things like they have gears. You can certainly get somewhere, but it's a lot of work. Um, so if you like, we're looking at the Rad Mission here. I feel like the Rad Mission would probably be a little bit easier to pedal if the power uh, if you ran out of power, if you didn't want to turn the power on. So that's one thing to consider. A lot of these bigger e-bikes with the big tires, fat tires, and all the other stuff. Um, if you do want to pedal a bike without electric, you got to kind of think about that when you're making a choice there.
Yeah, absolutely. The two bikes that I go no power on are the Rad Mission and my Priority Current before I unfortunately lost it. But those are both, fairly urbanized, fairly lightweight bikes that are pretty easy to pedal without any electricity.
Oh, and a friend of mine just got a Ride One Up Prodigy, and he said it rides better without electricity than his old bike, and with electricity, obviously, is way better. But um, he's a big fan of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that one's got the Brozo motor, which is also pretty nice and lightweight. And I
Yeah,
see that
I recommended that.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing you listened to you.
All right, the CSC RX1E, America's next low-cost highway-ready electric motorcycle, begins shipping.
This is one I've been excited for a while. They announced it at the end of last year. It is finally shipping. And this is one of the first sort of low cost, highway capable electric motorcycles that really delivers. It sort of brings what people wanted from the Metacycle in a slightly more expensive package. It's about $8,500 now, but it delivers on the specs that most people need. It goes 80 miles an hour. It can get over 100 miles of range in the city. Now, when you take that at 80 miles an hour, you're going to cut the range significantly. But for most people, even if you've got 20 miles of highway commute, you can still do it on this bike and then get into the city. You can live in the suburbs, ride this on the highway into the city, and then ride home all on one charge. It's a fairly big bike. It's about 450 pounds, but there's a lot to it. It's got a fairly large 6.5 kilowatt hour battery. It's a liquid cooled bike, so it's got a 8 kilowatt continuous, 18 kilowatt peak mid drive motor with a belt drive on it. Both the motor and the controller, I believe, are liquid cooled. So it's kind of like a almost a zero motorcycle setup there, but in a much more affordable package. Now, the fit and finish obviously not going to be as nice as Zero. It's not going to have the same support as Zero, though CSC out in California is known for having really great support. They have an entire warehouse full of parts in stock there. So if you ever have an issue, they FedEx it out right away so you can get it fixed locally. But I wouldn't compare this to a Zero in many aspects, but the performance is fairly close to an entry level Zero at significantly lower cost. So to me, this is basically the first highway ready budget electric motorcycle that is shipping in the U.S. And really, it answers what the Saunders almost did is that full highway capable performance with a pretty decent range. Because here we've got about 50% more battery or so than the Saunders Metacycle. So I'm super excited to see this one is shipping. And from what I've heard, they've already sold the first two containers that came in. So people are getting pretty excited about this one as well.
You said it compares to a Zero. Is that like the FX?
Yeah, so the power here is slightly below the FX or the FXE, which are both like their I think it's 35 kilowatt peak, but the continuous power is going to be much lower than that. The battery is approximately the same size as the 7.2 kilowatt hour battery on the Zero FX and
Hmm.
FXE, because Zero even uses like a slightly misleading way to calculate battery capacity. They use the full voltage, like the fully charged voltage of the pack. So what they call 7.2 is really like the high sixes or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's actually pretty comparable to the power and performance of a Zero. The acceleration's not quite there, um, and it's not as fun, I would say, as when I was on the FXE. But it's also a different type of bike. This one is more of an adventure style bike, and it rides very differently. You're sitting up really tall. I took this one canyon carving out in the foothills over Azusa, California,
Wow, looks
and
like you almost got an accident there.
yeah,
The
so
truck pulling out.
yeah, like it was like a wide open highway, and he decides to pull out right in front of me. But good brakes, which I discovered right there. So this one actually it's interesting because it's got the old school brake setup where the rear brake is controlled by a foot lever instead
Hmm.
of like most newer light electric motorcycles have two hand levers. So in that way, it's also set up like a Zero, which a lot of guys that have been riding bikes for years prefer. Me, I prefer the two hand levers because A, I come from bicycles, and B, I was never like a gas bike guy, so I don't have all the muscle memory of braking with my foot.
But you do have a brake on the handles, right? One brake.
Yeah, so the right lever is your front brake, the
Got
right
it.
hand lever, and the right foot controls the rear brake.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to go over the handlebars. Uh,
Yeah, and I mean that's like the legacy way to do it because used to the left bar was reserved for a clutch. It's just
right.
now the left bar is naked. There's nothing there because you obviously don't need a clutch on a electric motorcycle. Well, actually some do, but the most don't have gearboxes, so you don't need
Yeah.
it anymore. This one doesn't have any.
And you know, CSC very low cost or relatively low cost. Quality of components, like was it it rattling? Was there? I mean, we see a lot of storage containers on here. Is that loaded up well?
Yeah, I mean it rode great. It felt solid. The storage boxes there are plastic. They're not like metal boxes, so they aren't quite as nice as they look like those silver metal boxes like aluminum, but they're just plastic. But
Hmm.
still, I mean everything's quite nice. The only downside of those big boxes is it's a bit hard to get on and off if you're a shorter rider.
Right.
I'm 5'7" or about 170 centimeters, and so like sort of spearing a leg over the saddle there was a bit tricky since you can't swing it up over the rear box. But if you got a couple inches on me, then you'll probably be fine. But other than that, it was great. It's also got those crash bars there, like you can see. So the fact that it comes with the boxes, with the crash bars, all those things that would be hundreds of dollars on other bikes is a nice part of this.
And you can take those off, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you probably take like I don't know 40 pounds off with taking those boxes and crash bars off.
And we talked about the quality before, but like rattling noise, like the motor makes a lot of noise, doesn't make a lot of noise. What's like
No,
the
it
vibe?
was yeah, it was eerily quiet. It's got a belt drive too, so you don't
Hmm.
have chain noise. Nothing really rattling around. One
Vibration is low.
thing, yeah, not a lot of vibration. It was interesting because when I would get off it, you'd still hear the fan for the radiator running for like a minute, and it was very weird because normally when you get off an air cooled electric motorcycle, like there's just no noise. I mean, even when you come to a stop, there's like it's silent. It's as if it's off because obviously it doesn't make any sound idling. So it's weird to hear like a slight humming from underneath you with the little fan on the radiator running.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it was a beauty to ride. It was just, I mean, it was so smooth, so nice, and I rarely get to ride in such an upright position either. But because this is styled after an adventure bike, it's very upright, and it just made me much more comfortable riding on it.
How about regen?
It's a good question. I don't think it has regen braking.
Mm.
I don't remember anything about that.
Yeah,
The other
just
thing
thinking
that
that those canyons, there's probably like a lot of opportunity to generate electricity on the way down.
Yeah, yeah. It would be nice. The other thing that would be a nice addition would be level two charging. It just charges off of a wall plug.
Yeah,
So you did give up a few things. Actually, now that I think about it, I can't remember if the FX or the FXE has built-in level two charging or not. I know I had an FXS for a while and I just plugged it off of the wall. But it would be nice if it had level two charging.
what's the amperage or
The
how fast?
charger,
Yeah,
that's a good question. I'm not sure because I never charged it up. I just borrowed it for one ride.
right.
I
I
don't
mean,
remember what the charger looked
yeah,
like or how strong it was.
I guess you can get, if you're lucky, you can get a kilowatt out of a 110 volt. So filling up the battery 7 hours and 110, seven,
Yeah.
7.2 kilowatt hours. Not too bad. That seems like a pretty good bike. And the price obviously is the big thing. $8,000, like pretty crazy price for that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the $20,000 zeros and energy kits and stuff are going to outperform this, but for someone who's just looking for a commuter bike, eight and a half thousand bucks is in my opinion a very good price for a highway capable bike like this with good range.
Yeah, and CSC's been around for a while. Customers I hear from are pretty satisfied. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they've been around for decades. They only got into the electric game about like 5 years ago, but the dealership itself has been here for just years and years.
awesome. All right, moving on. Polaris begins shipping its groundbreaking 110 horsepower Ranger XP Kinetic electric UTVs.
This is going to make a lot of people happy because they were way behind on their shipping schedule here. And it was like once a week I was getting emails from people asking me like if I knew anything, what was going to happen. There were a lot of reservation holders out there that were starting to get pretty impatient, which is understandable. I would be too. So it's exciting that we can finally share that the Polaris is actually shipping these things. And it's a big deal too because this is not just like a stepping stone product. This is a huge revolution for Polaris when they came out with their Ranger XP Kinetic. They made a big deal by saying this isn't just their best Ranger, like electric powered vehicle, because they did have a previous kind of like anemic electric Ranger, but that this is the most powerful UTV in its class, period, gas or electric. And having tested it out myself, I can tell you that it is wild. Like the power beneath you, the acceleration, even just like the smoothness, right? Like with UTVs, especially when you're using them for utility work, being able to like creep around slowly or like back up for a towing hitch. They're not known for their like super nimble maneuverability, but because this is an electric vehicle, it can just very slowly creep around if you want it to. You can very slowly ease up to a towing hitch or something like that. And so that's a huge advantage here. Not to mention the fact that it's just so quiet. Like when you're out in the woods, you're not scaring off the animals. If you're working on a farm, you're not startling the livestock, that sort of thing. And so a lot of big advantages here. And the fact that they're finally shipping these things is absolutely going to be a big deal for all the people that have been waiting well over a year. They might even be 2 years now at this point to get one of these in their hands. So I'm excited for you guys. And I'm also excited to test this thing out again because I think I'm going to have a chance in the next few weeks to get behind the wheel of one of these again, which I'm super excited for because it was awesome the first time.
And that was they're in Minnesota, Polaris.
Yeah, they have a couple locations. So they have the production is actually in Huntsville, I want to say, Alabama. Though
Okay.
the main Polaris, I guess headquarters for R&D and such is in Minnesota.
Yeah, I feel like they were there was like an event where they had their own track near their headquarters or something like that.
Yeah, they have like some serious off-road testing tracks out there that like go through every type of terrain.
All right, I see this is only level 2 as well. Is that what size is the battery? Is that like a problem or is that fine?
Yeah, so it's because they actually were able to build these through a partnership with Zero. They use Zero's drivetrain, and
Oh,
so
interesting.
you either get one or two of Zero's. I think they're 17 kilowatt hour batteries, if I'm not mistaken. So it's either, I think, 17 or 34 kilowatt hours. Oh no, here it is. It's the 14.9 kilowatt hour pack. There we go. So you're either getting like 15 or 30 kilowatt hours, and it only charges at level 2. Zero has yet to adopt level 3 DC fast charging. I know people get on my case when I call it level 3 because I think it's technically not one of the levels, but
No, it is. Level 3
is
is
it?
is DC fast charging. Yeah.
Oh, people always told me that like DC fast charging is not technically a level, but okay. All right, that's good. Shows I'm not a car guy because there
Yeah.
aren't that many motorcycles that can
Tell
do
tell
DC
them
fast
people
charging.
to get lost.
All right, I'm gonna tell them. I'm gonna cite you from now on. Check
There
with
you go.
Seth.
Yeah.
So yeah, no fast charging, but you do get level 2 charging, and since most people just use these as like a utility vehicle during the day, like charging overnight, I think is going to be perfectly fine for most cases.
And this picture has towing. Does it have a rating of how many pounds it can tow?
Yeah, it can tow
Oh,
up
there
to
we go.
2,500 pounds, which is pretty good. I mean, that's
Yeah,
like
that's cars.
truck towing.
Yeah, that is pretty good. And why did this take so long to get out the door? Like, do we know what the wait was?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I don't know either. I don't know if it was like software issues, if it was hardware. You'd think the fact that they were working with Zero would make it easier to expedite things because they didn't have to develop a drivetrain. But in talking to the engineers, what I learned was that they actually had to do a pretty significant amount of customization on the drivetrain to make it fit their applications. Because motorcycles, they're rarely operating at high power most of the time. Like you gun it, you accelerate, and then you're back down to like modest power levels while you're cruising. But with UTVs, especially when you're off road, you could be in the high power end basically the entire time you're operating, especially if you're towing or you're crawling across rocks, you're going uphill, that sort of thing. And so they had to do some significant customization to make sure that the drivetrain worked just as well, basically at its high power range as it did for a normal motorcycle style application. And perhaps that just took longer than they were expecting.
Yeah. Well, glad that the customers are getting them, and I'm sure we'll hear from some soon. Last story. Easiest electric kayak conversion ever. BOTE and Bixby add a motor to kayaks and SUPs. A lot of acronyms in this one.
Yeah, right. So I think it's pronounced boat, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And they're basically like an inflatable. They started with I think stand-up paddle boards, but now they have inflatable boats like skiffs and kayaks and such. And they just teamed up with an electric motor company called Bixby that makes these small marine motors. And so with boats, I think it's called the Apex system, where they have like a pedal drive for their kayaks and for their stand-up paddle boards, which I guess turns them more into like a sit-down pedal board. Kind of changes everything there. But
Yeah.
basically, they have this system that already has pedal drive that goes down through the inflatable hole, and they were able to modify it to fit Bixby's motors. So now, if you have one of these systems, you can just like pop that sucker in, and you instantly have a motor underneath your kayak or underneath your stand-up paddleboard, and you've created an electric boat. It's got its own independent battery, which actually floats in case it goes overboard, which is kind of nice. I think you get at full power something like 80 minutes of runtime, which is not great, but at lower power you get I think like 9 hours. So it shows a big difference between how much energy is needed when you're just trolling along or when you're going fast. And fast here is kind of relative. I think the top speed is something like 9 miles an hour. So on water that's actually pretty decent, but it's not like super wind in your hair kind of speeds here.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is just such a nice, compact looking system that I just think it looks great. It looks like it works great. You just pop it in there, and in like 2 seconds, it's now an electric boat, and I'm pretty excited to see it.
Yeah. Low price too. $1,400.
Yeah, for boats, that's nothing. That's like a new steering wheel.
Right. And go to the neighbor's house if you live on the water, just down the street or whatever. Or I'm thinking of my in-laws' place in Florida. There's like a Publix and a couple shops across the water that takes like half an hour to get there by car, but really quick by boat. So if that's your scene, that might be a good product for you.
The
Um,
other cool thing is because they're inflatable, you don't even need like a trailer,
Right.
like
No
you
storage.
could have this in a backpack and just like walk up to the water's edge, inflate it, and you're like zipping around on your little electric boat.
So is this gray thing the battery, or is that just holding the dry storage there?
No, that's just a bucket. I think it's like a bait bucket.
Got it.
The battery is,
Is
I think
that
there
big
were
in here?
three smaller. Yeah, it's that like lunchbox looking thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that is pretty small. And as you said, it floats, so that's pretty good with a device like that. I'm also kind of surprised at the size of the motor. Seems really small. Even with the propeller, it's like a little jet.
Yeah, I mean it's not a a thrill-seeking kind of motor, but it'll
No.
get you moving along if you've got a small vessel like this.
Yeah. All right, cool product. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Let me get to the questions here. All right. Got a thumbs up. We got a fan or a not a fan of Heybike. I don't actually. So Arma Gideon says they're ugly. I like. There's nothing ugly about that bike. It seems fine. Like,
So they used to not be as good looking, but this one, yeah, I think they've
yeah,
really improved their appearance.
yeah. I was gonna say like of all the bike, like we've seen some bikes that could be called ugly. That one is just like it. If anything, it's not anything. It's just a whatever.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right?
right. All right. Mikhail Pardawala. Hello from Canada. I'm looking for a two-person e-bike here and not to have to pay crazy shipping fees for bikes from the US. Do you guys have any recommendations for bikes below 2000? And I'm assuming that's 2000 Canadian. I mean, I
There's a
guess,
company Bike Tricks, like Biktrix, that's Canadian. I think they have at least one moped style bike that might have a rear seat option. If you're looking for a local company, I think that would do it.
okay.
But
And then,
other than that,
I
like,
mean, Rad has the runner that, you know, has the seat in the back that you can, and they'll deliver to Canada and it'll be a below 2000 starting price. Although the new runner is a little bit over 2000. Um, yeah, and you can get like a hyper scrambler, whatever. They'll send those to Canada. All right. Steve Rice, we don't need battery cars that have unnecessary oversized battery packs that constantly need recharging everywhere we take them. Okay.
hot take.
Free energy self-generating generators attached to axles. Okay. This is and yes, it's coming from Facebook. That makes perfect sense. This is where I see this kind of stuff. Random dude, I haven't charged my priority current in 130 miles and I've still got 4 out of 10 bars.
Yeah, that's a dude that also turns his bike off when he pedals, I can tell.
Right. He's
Nice.
doing a lot of pedaling. Hey, all right. Doug Grinberg's e-bike weight consideration. Does your transit agency allow heavier e-bikes on bus bike rack in case you run out of steam, juice, time? Can you even lift? Do you even get that high? Yes, that is a consideration. We recently reviewed some special bike racks kind of designed for e-bikes. It was the Hollywood rack. Um, and they're obviously built way stronger than a typical e-bike rack, and that's a really good point that bus bike racks may not be built for e-bikes. I don't know. Is
Yeah,
that
never really thought about it. I mean, I like to think that anything that's on like public transit, they build to be like bulletproof.
that's true?
But yeah, I mean, you hit a big bump with a 60, 70 pound e-bike, that could be an issue.
Yeah, and like e-bikes aren't crazy heavy. Like we have a bike rack that's built for 5 bikes. Uh, if you just put 1 or 2 e-bikes on there, it's going to be the same weight as 5 bikes. So I don't know. All right, moving on. Nico D. I wouldn't look at any EV under 100-kilometer range. I wonder what he's referring to there. But
Yeah, maybe that was in the RX1E. I mean,
okay,
by the time you get to motorcycles and cars, yeah, like 100 kilometers, that's 60 miles.
yeah,
Like if you're getting out of the city, you want more than 60-mile range. That's
for
fair.
sure. All right, the RX1E looks great. Any possible of level 2 charging upgrade in the future? I already chatted with CSC, and as you know, it's just L1 now. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something that'll be easy to upgrade, like, an aftermarket thing you can wire in. You're probably limited to those like adapters that still charge at, whatever your wall charger's speed is.
Yeah, and the that actual like interface didn't look like the metal was too heavy duty there, so I don't think it's gonna be rated for a lot of DC charge. Dan Sullivan, what are some quality electric motorcycles with level 2 charging possibility, even with the adapters, say if going to an RV park or something?
I mean, all the like flagship motorcycles, like Energica Zero, actually not Livewire. I was gonna say they all have level 2 charging. Livewire does charge on level 2, but it's at level 1 speeds. Though the new, sorry, that's the Livewire 1, the original bike. The new one that's coming out in the next few months, the Livewire S2 Del Mar, will charge at level 2 speed. So basically every, flagship electric motorcycle out there now pretty much charges at level 2 speeds. It's just the sort of urban commuter bikes like the Metacycle, like the RX1E. I think the Rivet Anthem also won't have level 2 if I'm not mistaken. All the like sort of urban commuter bikes are still mostly level 1 charging.
All right. So this is weird. Diesel vehicles are making a comeback in France. Okay. What about the Daymac in Canada?
Oh yeah, I forgot about Daymac. I haven't heard from them in a while about any new releases, but they're a Canadian company that they've got everything, like from like rascal scooters for octogenarians to like weird off-road like UT or like ATV stuff. They got everything, so they might have an e-bike for you.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for the comments.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and make sure you check back 2 weeks from now where we'll be back with the next episode of the Wheelie Podcast. Have a great